by some of us that we help these geshes. We are all here, so we are all also helping all of you in order to receive the teachings from Geshe. Yolandi introduced the name Shide's meeting.
This
We will take some pictures and then record
So I'm just going to introduce a little bit about what this place is. This place is called Simgishide in Tibetan, which means peace of mind. And so the goal of this place is to share the teachings of the Buddha, but you don't necessarily have to be a Buddhist, that you can take advantage of these teachings in ways that will help you have happiness and peace of mind and live a better life. The monks here are all from Drebung Losaling, and they're all from a Kham, in a region of Kham called Tongo. And the teachers are very highly qualified geshes. So they study Buddhism in these monasteries for 22, 23 years. So they're very, very rigorous Buddhist studies. And so we're really fortunate that Geshe Gyaltsen also teaches down at the Tibetan Library and has taught for 12 years. And so the mission of Shide is to sort of fulfill one of the goals of His Holiness, which is to help not necessarily spread Buddhism, but help people use Buddhist teachings so that they can live better lives and be happier, whether they're Buddhists or not. He says, everybody, welcome, thank you so much for coming. Have a good day.
Hello, how are you? How are you?
That is his only, he says, these are my only 2 words of English. How are you?
Namaste, namaste.
To the 2 Indians, namaste.
That's all. Then that did Namato, Nelapeni, Bakazan, Joshi, and also the Deacon Sortam, Kanichego, your sin. That didn't you call the shit of
So the topic today we're going to talk about is how to have a happy mind. Deiki, so it's like happiness and peace of mind.
Yana to non-choose the Kanichi imba, Timoto, China, and Degrees in Kosorewa.
He's also going to give just an introduction to what is Buddhism, what are the Buddhist teachings.
You might know
And then what do these 2 things have to do with each other, sort of happiness and peace of mind and the Buddhist teachings? He's going to connect the 2.
Yeah. Tangaruzo Tambo Delea, Karashiku Stigana, Natsuko Kan Dojaga, Deva Delea, Kariori, Luso Latibi Deva Chitong, Senso Latibi Deva Chit, Nioga to give a shingle.
So when we talk about happiness and suffering, there's 2 types of happiness and suffering. There's the happiness and suffering of the body, and there's a happiness and suffering of the mind.
Yeah. Luso Latibi Deva said, the Karres, the Nazo, to Chin Tiki Yapoyona. So
if we want to have the happiness that depends on the body, we need good inner and outer conditions like money, like a good house, all of the things we need in our daily life to support our body.
Simple Latin Diki Seade, Cholocontiki, Yoba Sango, Simple Latin Diki, the Tabachi, Yung Tukurevesina, Dingibamu.
So it's not necessarily true that the happiness that depends on the mind depends on these outer conditions.
Yeah. Tangarso Simple Latin Diki, the Kanichi Latin Yungu, so Samlo Yapo Tantang, Samlo Tantan, Yapo Jishimbayana, Teletini, Simple Latin Diki, the Yung Tukure.
So how do we have this happiness of mind, right? This happiness of mind depends really on how we think.
Penangazo same sort of thing we take it the 2 quarantine young gures, same good trotte yapoyona, same sort of thing we take it the yapoyong to cure. Same good trotte.
So if we have the good health of mind, Simgichudin, then we will have a happy mind.
Yeah. That imbayina yangazo. Same good truth, young marching kid, carrier is 나초라 야 남도 담도 뭐지 요송자니 남도 소리 되니 무슨 생군토 된데 돌아 당샤비요래.
So what causes us to lose a healthy mind? Like, why don't we have a healthy mind? The main cause is that we have all of these discursive thoughts that are coming all of the time, and these are the things that take away, that cause us to not have a healthy mind.
야. 근데 여러분 지가로 송도지 디가나 근데 야거가 나우이 리숑데 꺄소체고도 꺄소지 마마 야보요 반다 냠 야라소체고 데모모스도
이거는 그렇게 개가라디 열세
야거가 나가모고 리숑 야 냠발라소체고
And so one of the things His Holiness often says is that we have to really ensure that the Buddhist teachings are sort of brought back and understood and again.
단다 야거가 나우 리숑 시디간이야 남비 리숑 짱짱 송고요마 야거가 나우 리숑고 나로라 배 생건 초된 제당 꼴래 하진 거 비타고 레시 비타고 요레스.
So right now we're not going to go into incredible detail about the sort of the Buddhist teachings in the text because this is a really detailed study.
야. 이내 송산이 맞죠 지 상로 당당 야고지 영화라 수수의 생각과 남샤도 야고 신고 셰바가 남샤도 야고 신고.
So the main topic that we'll talk about really is within all of the Buddhist studies we think of as Buddhist psychology. So how do we use Buddhist psychology to work with the mind?
다 되니까 셰바가 남샤다 저 주치셔도 가르에서 되거나 다 야거가 아니 공부를 돌아서 비 중간나로라 하진 거 비타고 이니 바바 도면서 중간나로라 하진 거 비타고.
So among the great teachers, the great texts that have been written, the ones who've talked about sort of the Buddhist psychology of the mind, the most important ones are Asanga and Nagarjuna. They're really high quality.
다 넘버 2 이마이나 다 디산이랑 저서 처음부터 저 초동 잡니 가려요레 내가 여름 제가 단다 남비 체리 다다도 군디 되어니 봐. 다 디나는 하진 그배 셰바가 너당 아니까 가르 셰바 뉴로 간이 당고도 저서 콜라 배 야고요레스 저런 저 이마이나요 단다 다름산이 데베레레 키니로나 very good to us.
So that His Holiness and Thupten Jinpa have written the books on the science of mind and Buddhism, and the second one does a very great job of going into detail in an accessible way about the Buddhist science of mind, the Library of Science and Wisdom, I believe, right? Is that the?
Yeah. 딱 주제셔도 말아서 안에 생각과 안에 대기도 용어를 제발로 소소 상로 당당데 상로 당당 직 제발이나 소소라 대기 용어되지. 상로 당당 직 제발이나 양 소소라 간이지 용어돼야 누구지 용어돼야지 차기요래.
So the main thing we have to sort of understand is if you think in one way, your body and mind will be happy, and if you think in a different way, your body and mind will have problems.
배샤바이나 들이 저런서 상모데 다름살라 랩데요래. 안 저런서 가시 다름사도 배 기본도 한 다름사 배 기본도 삼비 기본도 삼비 상로도 당니도나 저런서 가와도나 아니 그 점점도 기본지 용거래. 양 이나 저런서 가시가 사람살라다 기본미도 사자 저부도 미 상가도 아니 벤조사 깔레카고도 배다름사도 기본미도 삼나 아니 냠도 저거다 이나 디미 삼로 다니들라 디키라고 말했다.
So for example, you've all come to Dharamsala, and if you walk around Dharamsala with a good attitude and a happy mind, and you go, oh, everything is wonderful, you're very happy, then Dharamsala seems like a beautiful place, and you're very happy. If you come to Dharamsala and you focus on the negative in your mind, you think, oh, it's very hard here, it's very difficult, I don't like this place, and you look around Dharamsala, and then everything seems terrible, but it's the same place.
제가 내내 송장 나로서 지금 semkongo 내기세야 돼. 주 용어를 제발 소소가 상로 당당지. 상로 당당지 제발이나 소소라 지 내기지라 돼야 돼. 그래서 따당 그 돈이 거래. 상로 당당.
So the main point here is that in terms of mental happiness, in terms of well-being, it's really the way that you think that is important. The way that you think is the really depending factor on how much happiness and well-being you have in your mind.
배샤바이나 나 빈솔라 데비까래야 니 김시들래야 치 니만 딱 곱게 사오시요. 아니 아니 담보텔랑이 다데베 선보도디 키데 케잡데 선보도디 란싱 페 나로 샤가 나라 감바나라 용고네 칼리도.
So, for example, in his house, there is a neighbor that has a dog that just barks all the time. And this is a very common problem here, actually. There's lots of dogs here. I also have this problem. and when it first started happening, it was really difficult for him because he was very upset. He got very frustrated about it.
다 지성의 삼로로 어떤 것이 다 다데 그렇게 잡나 그런 가마나 그런 깔레마가나 나 개민도 삼니 다디 삼로를 깔레깔레 지로다니 조바도 데스 곰니 근데 지가 지스고 게 가서 잡나 갈라노고도.
And then so slowly he said, "Oh, okay, well that's okay. That dog is having some kind of problem, but I'm going to just let it go and get used to it and be okay with it." And so slowly over time, as he's gotten used to it, now the dog barks and he has no problem with it. He doesn't get upset.
Pena kakala ko karche grezi dikana gondanga ni kiwi kala ni go chileyon. Perché jagti na lamsa ni ko tobre. Imbayna tambo pe semla no bodu. Da chizinge samlo danika tonga nida to dan chibari ko ke jabdan chibari ina ngaron ko samlo dan chibari ngala dikete no mando ko chabrichido.
So, for example, often the dog would bark when he's sleeping, and the dog would wake him up, and that would cause him problems. But then slowly, as he changed his thinking and his way of mind, he didn't bother him anymore, and it didn't wake him up. And so the dog's barking lost the ability, the power to harm him, essentially, to harm his mind by him changing his own way of thinking.
아니 잠잠나 도고리 냠도 도고요레 냠도 도디가라 로바치 판스 치치를 코 냠도 도고나스 에 심본도 코페디차도 삼니상로 다데나 제나서 냠도 도네 기보요 말와 다데 니 로바도 참마 야보에 그페 코서 냠도 기본도 삼로 다니 도 되와이나 소소 페 잠잠 참마 기보요르와.
So in another example, if you guys are all together and you're going out walking together and you think about the person next to you, oh, that person's really annoying, I don't like them, I don't want to be with them, then it's not a very happy walk, right? Like it's not very much fun. But if you have a good attitude, if you think, if you like the other person, you think, oh, that other person's wonderful, they're my friend or they're my travel or whoever that we've been with, and then you have a happy walk. But it's the same walk depending on how you think about it.
맞아 되니 바다디 가나 미카지 냠도 좋고 냠도 대고 그래 임바이나 카디나 자리 장장 거니 배도 가지다 바바 거나 냠도 쇼니 도디가나 바바 거나 판지 냠니 거니 도도 차나 지지저 뭐는 배셔나 저러 야 바바 당기 콘도 사기 지나 다 바바 리아 닌가요 봐 저서 냠도 좋고 간실라 자리도 고 삼로 배치기치래 삼로
So when you're with other people, if you're going somewhere with other people where you're walking, or even if you're like on the little scooties, you see all the little scooties people drive here, right? So like if you're driving on your scooty and you're getting angry and you're sort of getting frustrated and getting sort of upset in traffic, there's a real risk, right? You get upset, you don't pay attention, you hit the other person. So when you're associating with other people, when you're with other people, really it's important to have a good attitude and to stay connected.
삼로라야 딘디가 미냠든 참보 마용와다 두서 참마도 수 가르치고래 맞추길래야 나르게를 세안로다 착도 세안로다 렌셈 세안로다 콩토 딘디식 첨보요 송자니 아니 미다 미냠도 참보 용구요.
So the main point here is when you're associating with other people, when you're doing things with other people, what is it that causes you to have these problems, these bad attitudes towards other people? The four things that he mentioned are pride, jealousy, so pride, jealousy, anger, oh, and competitiveness.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
그래서 나라 도보도무 전이요 말. 가르치는 해바래라 난 동네 다니 말이. 이나 니 삼바드 삼로도 동네 다니. 나 콘도식 제다니 나라 도보도무 요 말.
So when he was very young, he was not a he was a lay person at that time. He was not a monk. He did not have very many friends. And the reason why is he was a very angry child, and he was very mad all the time, and so no, he had no friends.
제가 말초 배나 콘도도 제대 콘도도 가디나 콘도 제대와이나 소소라 마키바마도 미샹달라노 노금미도.
So if you're angry, not only does it make you unhappy, but not only does it make the other person unhappy, but it makes you unhappy as well.
다가나시가 배나 나르겐도지 나마도메 소반디나라 나마도메 나마도 케바메선 나르게지니도 되와이나 수강기념도 참 보이고 말해.
So if you walk around and you think, oh, I'm such a wonderful person, I'm the best person in the world, no one's going to want to be friends with you, right? Like you're going to be without friends. Is this true or is this not true? What do you guys think?
오늘의 말에.
What do you think?
See, yes,
Yes,
no.
no? Yes.
Yes. 다 yes나 맞아 가르쳐 거래. 다 딜리가 상로도 좀 유로와 땅거리. 유로와.
So since we agree, yes, what do we have to do? We have to work to change our minds, to change these attitudes.
마동아서 yes라. 아니 거란자 컨트롤한디 로 되어 있는 뱅고만. 당아서 그 yes라나 그 란싱긴 유로한도고 말해. 다 그 유로한도와라 탑름지 된 거고.
So since we've said yes and we want to change these minds, if we just continue to let these negative emotions arise, it doesn't do us any good. So now we have to learn a method for how do we work with these negative emotions.
다된 유로 땅이 탑름들이야 가르레즈는 돈다 추 자데 맞아 삼로 녜바 유로 땅이 탑름들이야 추라고.
So what we call the Buddhism or Dharma is the ability, the way of working with these negative emotions.
추 제대로 주비도 나라 주 제대로 조주 제바 조주 제대 나서 그 류마였음 난 유로 땅이 류마였음 그 나니까 소소 그 삼로라 유로 땅이 그 탑름지래야 추.
So ch is the word that gets translated as Dharma, which is basically Buddhism. And ch in Buddhism is also related to the word in Tibetan soju, which is to repair. So he's making a comparison between Dharma and the ability to repair or fix our mind. And that is what we think of as Buddhism. Buddhism is the way to essentially repair our mind and remove these negative emotions as much as we were able.
마동아서 니가 초바 부야도다 찬시야도다 아니 소와다비야 라소바도 추리 그 제고 잠레 마도 충원이데 대바네 충원이 자데 맞아 주주데 소소가 생각하는 야츠 요고.
So we, as Buddhists, we often do lots of offerings, we make lots of prayers, we have lots of rituals, but this is not the real Buddhism. Really, the Buddhism is in our mind. It's changing our mind. And so these things, in so much as they help us change our mind, they support that.
어디네 소산이 당아서 주 가르고거래 나서 너야나 대원도 그요래 다 대원도 그 요바이나 가르레즈 대비 주대 적당 신고거래.
So we want happiness, right? We all want happiness. And if we want happiness, we have to understand what the cause of happiness is.
말아 대화고도 전에 깨잡니 야나 가다니 대대나 대화 남이 봐요 말에 산이 깨요 말에.
So if we just sort of go outside and say, I would love to be happy, and we open our mouth, happiness is not going to fall in our mouths.
근데 요나다 가서 가디나 나라 대화고 이제 깨침부 잡니 쳐발라 돈이 참이 깨잡니 되는 데도 이나 대용하려면도.
Yeah, so we just go outside and stay there and say, please give me happiness, right? It doesn't help us.
너 디샤바이나 두물 세야 돼 수수수수라 망쳐야 돼 가서 수수 두물 세야 돼 수수수수라 소고 요래 가서 대화 고고 요바이나 수수수수라 소 대화도 소고 대화도 죽고.
The important thing is that we all create our own happiness and we all create our own suffering.
드네인 소산이 나가서 지금 빼나가서 모모 사고나 소소고 모모 야고 소시나 모모 신보라 하기로와 그러와 빼대 난시 소소라 대화 고고 요바이나 대화 적당 야고 시나 소소라 대화 데키 포좀 소바 독거리.
So as an example, momos are the Tibetan dumplings. They love the momos, right? So if you want to eat very delicious momos and you don't know how to make delicious momos, you won't eat delicious momos. But if you can make good momos, you can eat good momos. So in the same way, if we know how to have a happy mind, if we know how to take care of these negative emotions, we can help ourselves have a happy mind and lower these negative emotions.
Dharamsala only momoraso, eh?
Have you guys had momos in Dharamsala yet?
Ramaso. Ani Jaramso Dharamsala leko machu pare.
I'm not actually arrived in Dharamsala yet.
We are going to take a round in the street, and I have told these people they can try their moves.
Oh, good.
제모이. 이나요 Dharamsala 용니 모몽 입을 사고 그러다.
He said he's joking, but really you do have to eat some momos while you're here.
They are delicious.
The variation will do some.
야, 네. 고모모사.
You've had some momos. You've been here before.
제가 앞에 있는 시원이 정부 시바이나 저런선 잠잠용이 연딘디가 진짜다 딘디라 도노치야 돼. 하진 거 저런서 깔레 몸보 전도소 몸보 당고 쳐버리. 가르레지 가나요? 진짜다만도 도와이나요? 소소래야 로종다만다 라기라 봐.
통소디 그래 디갑세디.
그렇죠. 베나다다 이렇게 돈좀나 도고로 봐. 대단 냠도 진짜다만다 도노 쳐버리나. 소소래야 되니 지상로 당산다만다 로종다만다 라기라 봐. 이 약보리스.
So while you're here, while you're traveling around Dharamsala and I guess other places in India, I don't know where all you're going, but if you have the opportunity to take different classes and to study, Buddhism or the things that interest you didn't specify Buddhism, that would be very good.
Yeah. 다 자갈라 저런서 용니 약슈 지가리요레 라디간라 제자 자갈라 요가 약보. 아디간라 자갈라 가리요레 아니 삼로 당당가 토래야 아니 주 주제당다 두소페 자갈라 모니 항상 약보요로.
So in India, there are some of the things that India has this incredible history, this really wonderful opportunity to study. Is the yoga here, of course, came from here. There's some really wonderful opportunities in the different Nangchu and also just generally speaking, the incredible religious history in India. They have an incredible history of religious practitioners and scholars, and so if you take advantage of take classes in that also would be wonderful.
Yeah. 아니 양치 가려요레스나 아니 자가를 저런서 대 상마 따다 야를 믿어서 상마서 제니베 가자시 되는지 왜 로로요레다 야를 배 쉽대요.
And also to take advantage of just some time to relax and talk and just have a peaceful mind would be very wonderful.
야, 다든지 소산이 노르디 샤바이나니 저런서라 가르치고요. 어디가 당가로서야 눈이 대기 고요바이나 가르레스 셈고 대기도 주레스 셈고 대기도 주연송사 셈고 대기도 니버 저당 신고요레스.
So really the most important point here is that if you want to have a happy mind, right? If you want to be happy, the most important thing is having a happy mind. Right? Out of everything, if you have a happy mind, that's what will really make you happy. And then if you want to have a happy mind, you have to know how, the method to have a happy mind.
다 셈고 대기데 야보지 용와라 가르레스데 곰 자데 고 곰잡고 이마이나 곰 잡아래야 곰 잡당 신고.
So the method to have a happy mind is to have to meditate. However, you have to know what meditation is. You have to know how to meditate. And to know how to meditate, you have to study.
yang kashi dini samlo tengara kakolangi ya dini samlo tengara tangallo chembore angelo jojena de yongsa mari nge dini ngarung dini kakola samlo ngalelo chaworewa dini samlo tang shurkudu ina jera joina dini samlo tang yo marda lo chemboina lo jojena suzo dada dini lo joje thore odin so danda ina yo suzo 아니 자물이나 가져서 대기요 봐는 뒤쪽 로정체고.
So and also sometimes like me for example I'm old and it's really hard to study. Oh, it hurts my head to study. You think like that and you get lazy. So it's okay. Just study as much as you are able, right? That's the most important thing, to do what you're available to do.
베나마도 있나 예 게임도문도 장투미도 레로 임바이나 네 난주 단다이나 장기요 론진 체기요.
So him, for example, he has tried to learn different languages in English and Portuguese, but it's very hard for him. He hasn't been able to do that, but he has studied a lot of Buddhism.
야, 나저저 지와요나?
Do you have any questions, anybody?
지와. question?
Questions?
Any questions?
Have you been to Sarnath?
Kirang Sarnath John Penong Yave. Sarnath Tikari Tisana Pekino.
Sarnath.
Sarnath.
Saranath.
Where Buddha was enlightened.
Saranath.
Sarnath Diye.
Warnath.
Varnasi.
대모 가시 틀렸어. 도제단 와르나시 양바젠 정말이야. 대모 가시 제사도 와요.
Yeah, he's been to Bodh
아닌다.
Nalanda. He's been to Nalanda Bodh Gaya several times. He's been done.
Fascinating.
다 산지 준된 데서데 당아서 남바 지금 언니 지나고 남비 똥바래 자와 지모리. 임바이나 딘디 그 상로 마당와이나 언니 전이 산지 준된 데서데 자가르미 딘디 그 자와 지모 코페 세리버 디나네 장 샘금 세리버 빼 자와 지모 진 송서 어디 저거 내도 저는 제가로나 샘레 믹스 그 초로 빼 야고 용도.
So for us as Buddhists, it has a particular, very special meaning because this is where we understand Buddha attained enlightenment. But really, even beyond that, if you're not a Buddhist, I mean, the Buddha was an incredible scholar. There were incredible scholars that lived there. There's incredible blessings just from being somewhere who was such a deep practitioner and it did so much. Anyone else? Yeah.
How old were you when you felt the calling to become a monk rather than a lay Buddhist?
Kirang chapa chakti lokatsure.
nga draba jibikal parchilo chidang chenga da nga draba chegi yinsinya rabjung ku chendode alo jurguni yimbai jurgu da nga draba ngoni de parchi nishu ni
Tipula.
pola.
So when he first really decided I'm going to become a monk, he was 19. And then a few years later, he actually became a monk in Tibet.
Nanshu la pengu sini lojong cheya nguni lojong nguni denge loni she sasong kana nga ani pole ke ani komba jamne ani chomo lama ni pe kale jamni pe dodi kini pe kale jab ni ayong nivali dini so jagal le ani sojo ndebon la loni she sasong kana le dini shi ni nanshu lojong go zili.
So after that, he was in Tibet, and so you couldn't really study in depth in Tibet. And so then after that, he's very difficult. They literally hike over the Himalayas and in sandals like some Zampa, right? So he's hiked over the Himalayas, very difficult, very difficult. Long trip, got to Nepal, and then from Nepal he went to the monasteries in South India in Drebung. And that at 23 is where he began to really do the in-depth studies.
가르에서 나와서 답에 리간이 드러나마도 맞을라 익차 메인 송자니 아니 가자데 트치나는 랑고 모다데 바이디 야용니까 어디니 가서 되는 용특기요만 다 재미가 마음이 당 녀도바다 뜻고 만통사니 아니 린다마다니 베 고라잠니 드러나마도 요말 나 지제나 감리나라 신도나 가르제나 하고 요말데 이나요 우측 잠니 요네 따따 야가지라 야갈라 야고 jorson.
So one of the reasons it's so difficult is that they can't just take the road to Tibet. They're walking, but they have to walk up in the mountains. They have to hide from the Chinese army and the Chinese police. So they're walking through the mountains, through the snow, through the forest, sort of working their way up and over the hills, hiding the whole time until they finally get across the border into Nepal. So 20 people. He went 20 people together.
Ngatoda yang kange nalola mu tolando ya da kamba da lapa tolando ya dindigo ji tingamba chomaso imbaina popa mambo pu chunju da dindi mambo kange nala zani mambo shiore ani tsole on de nala ya kaji manchi kamba tolando mu tolando lapa tolando da dindigo pa kange hajing chemu chong.
So his group was 20 people, 1 layperson and 19 monastics. He said among his group, actually, no one died or had lost limbs or anything, but it was very, very common. It was very, very common to the Tibetans that are making this journey because they're hiking in snow across the Himalayas, literally, right? So they lose limbs, they lose their eyes, they'll lose fingers, hands, right? It's some of them will fall off the mountains and die. It's a very, very difficult journey.
That's all. Any tiba.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate the story about the barking dog. Sometimes the decisions one has to make are a little bit more complicated. Suppose that other people were bothered by the barking dog, people who maybe were afraid to talk to the person who owned it and ask them to keep it inside. How do you decide whether you should either go and speak to the person on behalf, the dog owner, on behalf of yourself and other people to see if you can resolve it that way, or should you say to other people who are bothered by it, try and take the Buddhist way and accept it?
That's a good question. Sure. So, kongi chiwa di ki te toki gekyap kikola. Kongi nedang kiri sena di kong mishingi chetu te di kichi gekyap besumbo yore. Mishinla di ki te tsola, mishinla di ki te tsoshinla di sumbo gyap kyores. Di nokta sogi yores. Kongi di mishingi konga ao kirang di kite ki dakpo gecha sherok nang song song. Hakosonge. So did mito chichi ki mishin la I kong. So kong di kongi chopo ki chedu di kite dakpo la gecha shegore. Si kandis damka yore. Damka jik di kiki dakpo gecha shegore. Yang na di mishin o kirang di nangcho samo tangare di jasumbo sego mare samo tangare.
Hakos. Yabudu. Tadi ngai ndabore. Ngai tambo tani chi de ngala sumbo so de ngala nge chi dabo de la tema chi ni chi labi. Ki chozo chi de ya bule ya ane jana yabudu pe na gonda niki yange kakala gomke apde ji ko pe sumbo so de nge tema chi ni dini labi ina kozo shida to na che maso. Dini ta Pashola lamni torna majidi soso samlo tanta njwa tansana yila shodo chawi.
So he said for his example, he did actually go talk to the person a couple times to try to just say, hey, I'm meditating, this is really bugging me, can you just put the dog inside? And only after that didn't work did he then think, okay, well now I have to really change my mind. Does that answer your question well enough?
Well, what about the other people? Do you then say to the other people who are bothered and frightened to tell or speak to the person with the dog, you say, look, you've got to take a different approach to this.
Are you frightened to speak to the person? Just so I can explain it. No. Okay, so the kongi ginanga the chiki dakpo the shinang sabo yore. So the shinki mite to konsola the getchego to the dia yomare.
Jaza nazo cholola dindiga tapshi jeni nyongda to na kangye to sozo cholola kazo tapshi je andu mundu samlo tang. Kasi nyimi dindiga yang shena sawo tang pasho diga njwa tang ro machena ta thalon chi karse gorezi de sozo ngoni njwa tang to jego. Ta pena ta ki mishi mitla da ta jara dini malazini ta ko ti kaza pena de so ibaina ka sha do pena kendo jatikala didi jin ko didi do so sha dikala ko ka try me basu do yena jinga di mishi da chara chula samo tang gorila na ko ta dili samo tang to maro ima ina yang soso go samo tang ta ko dini de na manoya go soso go zoba chole ya de samo tang to na de ko kame yang sendo gori.
So essentially there's two things. There's the sort of taking care of the external world and doing that. I'm going to try to ask your question again because I don't think I quite got the answer. There's this doing the things you have to do in the external world to try to resolve the situation, and then there's your own mind that you have to deal with. He didn't address about talking to the other people. Is your question, what should you or should you not help the other people, explain to them about Buddhism? Is it about
basically that's it, as to how should it be dealt with? Should you address the problem directly with the person who's causing the nuisance?
Yeah.
Or should you tell other people around there that no, that is not the way to do it? You've got to sort it out in your own mind and accept the situation as it is.
Well, I mean, he's definitely said you should first address the situation if you can, right? Take care of the practical level, and then the mind is then you deal with your mind.
아니 겨와 땅 뭐당 거라 레와 잡들이 지니 탑시지 딱 건져와 땅로 맞이나 다 디그 탑람도 그 매바인 송자니 다 탑람 조바리 외즈나 탑람 매바 말해 탑람 지가리 요바데 소소공원이 기와 땅탑체데 어디 탑람
So essentially, there's two methods of dealing with a problem, and the first method is the external, where you just try to normally, conventionally fix the problem if you can, right? And if you can do that, great, right? Sometimes you get a win. If you can't do that, you still have this other method of working with your mind, right? And that's the most important one.
옛날 나저 뭐지그 나저 검시가리 요래 라바이나 나저래야 아니 샴바 지그 소소라 노비까야 니버트 코인지로 당고레스 코인지로 마다는 춘이 용고 말이 있으니까 니버트 야샤야 당고 코인지로 당고레 코인지로 당고레스 나저 디그 삼로도 나저래 식체고 여러와 제자 다티 코인지로 당고레 라운데까나 코인지로 당마트로 디가는 소소 강에도 식체를 도샤고 근데 이 송산에 콜라 딘디 그래와 코인지로 마다나 다 다시 아니바 삼로 당야래 마도 콜라 우측 야로다 딘디 메바 차로
So if you are always sort of telling other people to change, like you need to change, this is your fault, you need to change, you will just create more and more problems for yourself and you'll never actually solve your problems. Let me try one more time to get your exact question. Kongi tiwa di taka kare na di kong di mishin la di nangche tap ni la di geche se the kongi mishin tetsola the di tabni res the kirangi sim the girwa chegore jabo
wala 제가 미신라 딜리까지 신이 벤도요 말에 미신의 파카가 아니 제가 그 상로 당당한 경우 당답치고 그래서
yeah that probably won't work very well. I think it's probably not going to help.
I'd like to please ask a totally different supplementary question. What does the pose of the Buddha there in the picture behind represent?
The pose, the Sangye ki de dang di kan sapure joba ki dang di pose kan sapure ti.
알레 지당 다 냠샤 단데 차데 딘데 차다 산노 디차 마데리제 디그 창즈지도 무게 살데 디디진데 냠샤 네 냠샤 그 차자진데 산노 지가 마 디디진데 고 디디진데 마 산노비 술지 디디진
This represents Sanum. This is touching the earth, the power of the earth, and this is stability of mind.
Okay, thank you.
That's all.
I have a more frivolous question.
Okay.
Do the monks ever feel cold? I see so many with their arms, and we're all dressed up. Is it his religion that keeps him warm?
그 경이 저거에서나 디 카리치네 디 규쇼라 대저 큐니 캬키 말에 강신아 디 공성 나초 창마디 두퉁 경기를 이니 디 차파테서 참참조나 디 putung yo 말에 putung 메발라 저기 여레스 그래서 디 기랑기 낭추 기랑라 디 짜와 차키리베 숭숭
세와
디 짜와 차
알레
낭추기 기랑 짜와 차키리
담보들라 아니 저랑게 아주 잡아다 안에서 장그레 삼비 맞춰라야 상로당야 돼 투지치 thank you.
Thank you for thinking of us people.
아니 제가 맞춰라야 예 포도 요야 딘데레 안나한테나 빼요.
So kind of putting kind of nangtumna.
딘데 포도 요봐 딘데레레 안나한테나 야고 누스 데tum나
Oh, it would be nice if we could have sleeves.
제모이 나저데 샤다 루바다 차가 되니 풍모인 송산이 장야 제가서도 집장 장기요리 장장모 용거리 곧 나야 요리 차야 요리 또 또야 요리 집장 용거리.
Yeah, so we're people, we have the same flesh, the same bodies as you, and so we get cold, we get sick, it's exactly the same. We feel like we have exactly the same problems.
다 임바이나양 산지가 아니 송거 나로라 다 지금 보통 제한당 다 딘디 지금 구통다 보통 요사들 딘디 고 말해서 다고 국권당 그양 팀지요래. 그래서 글로권당 그 팀가 나오라. 양디 보통 요사들 딘디 dini kona ya boyo mare so dini ju to so la dini da mo ju na so dini ji do de yimba ina ya da ko jirimbo dini do ina ka jile ko komshi chani ya de ze ma ta wo dini chagore yimba ina ngalo yimba ina ko 추냠는 거 돈이다 고 마타와 고 잡고 차기 미두디 곰식이 돈이 되지 아니 고 너무 매번 차기.
So in the Buddha's rules for monastics, they're not allowed to wear sleeves. So there's a specific monastic rules of why they do that. And yeah, of course they get cold. And he said no. When he meditates, he still gets cold. But because over time they're used to it, they just get used to it over time, and so then they become accustomed to it, and then it's not a big deal.
나서 볼래야 되네 라서주. 잡아다 안에 뭐 쫙 그래스 쫙. 알아서 차보래라고. 난 차보래라는 갈라고 다 볼래야 하진 거 정모래요. 정모이나 잡아다 안에 잡아는데 자 튼두선이 아니 공카이나에 샤모다 딘디 전에 막고니 로데오라. 그 이마이나 그 시다 다 당다 당게 오래돼 있나야 미끼아도 갈라고 잡아다 안에 고데 아 전에 당야 메비
In Tibetan, there's a saying that the monks and nuns' heads are made of metal, just because they're so hard. And the reason is because in Tibet, right, it's very cold, and even in the winter, and it's cold, and they have their shaved heads, and they're not wearing hats or anything, but they still have these really hard heads, so they don't feel cold.
다 주체셔도 가르에스가 양들이 포동다 딘디 군 다 동부 포동 요바군 까지라 구동 들리지나 미자당고 잡아니 잡으면 차로 손다 고대제 치그 파타용되는 옷고 잡아내샤 고 안에래샤 고 미자래서 딘디가 따로 무슨 그 아니 고 딘디가 고위치에대요 지금 네 포동 요바도 딘디거나 딘디가 말에 소야도요 딘디가 구버 요사래.
So I mean, the main thing is that the Sanghi so the so the main reason for this is that it's really according to the Buddhist teachings, it's really important that people can see the difference between a monk and a nun and a layperson, and so they have very specific dresses that according to the Buddhist teachings will allow you to know that's a monk, that's a nun, that's a layperson. So it's just like it's a uniform, just like the army or school or anything like that. It's just essentially a uniform that we wear.
That's all.
Many religions use meditation in different ways. Could you explain how your Buddhist practice
That's a nice
aids
question.
your meditation?
Yeah. So chu mangbo gom gyap kyore. The kanjis the kirangi kanjis nang chu gom gyap pingires.
Oh. 다 나서 곰들이야 조금다 제곰니 조금다 제곰니가 나니 그 조금도 제대와이나 소소가 셈 가서가 셈도 단내내 걸라 찌그 뇽바나시 가사가서 쇼도도 단 조금 몸보 지바이나 셈도 때르 피타포 템보다 사보차 그래서 조금도 제도 몸보 지바이나.
So there's two types of meditation. There is single-pointed meditation and analytical meditation. Single-pointed meditation is the type of meditation where you sit and normally our mind is just sort of running all over the place, going all over the place, and you bring your mind in, you bring it in focus on a single thing to calm your mind and to focus your mind.
다 제금세야도 몸고 제바이나 차버다 가리운 거래서 나저가 셈라 다기라 나르게를 타도 레셈 그 남동 담다도 어디서 지와당 그 가르세 제고 몸고 제바이나 어디서 야 지와당 두고 그래 소소가 삼로도 야기로 샤고 그래서.
And analytical meditation is the kind of meditation where we actually start to work on changing our mind. So all of our pride, our jealousy, our anger, all of these things. In that meditation, we're actually using reasoning to work with and try to diminish those negative emotions.
세상에 다기네 가족어디니 나르게라서 배 남동 담다든 지와당와라 곰잡고레스 곰잡발라 곰세한테 잡당 신고고레 대 잡당 시발라 로종 제고레스 다기 강래에 주임바 어디 기체모레스 셈나 유란로고나 니버도 오금갸고.
So, as he said before, if you want to change your mind, you have to meditate. But to know, if you want to meditate, you have to know how to meditate, right?
근데 지금
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah, so we'll take your permission now. Take your permission and
Go. Go shigure.
아, 인데.
so any more questions now from
나서 두지체 아니 저놈서 안데라 칼레jamni 다름살라 좀발레 디나니 장아서 십데라 페발라 아 가스요 두지체 어?
You guys want to do a photo? Go
yes,
straight.
group photo. Yes. So we all come this side. Yes.
Sorry. It's okay. I stopped it.